Hello, America. I'm Mark Levin, and this is Life, Liberty, and Levin. I have a very serious question I want you to think about. It should have a very easy answer, but it doesn't. What is Joe Biden's foreign policy? Can anybody define it? Can anybody give it some contour, some explanation as it applies to one region of the world after another? Foreign policy should be based on a word that I use all the time, prudence, not ideology. I don't think you could call Joe Biden's foreign policy prudential, given all the wars that are going on, and he's lit the fuse to many of them. Let's look at the Middle East for a moment. Syria is in the middle of a civil war. It has slaughtered anywhere from 300 to 500,000 of its own citizens. I don't remember Joe Biden giving a speech telling them to stop killing citizens and to start to protect them. Yemen's in the middle of a civil war. They're slaughtering people there as well. They are a surrogate for Iran. They are shooting missiles as well as sending drones to kill American soldiers, for which they're not paying any price. Lebanon had a civil war. Hezbollah basically has won it. It effectively controls that government, even though there's some tension. Their economy is literally crashing, which is one of the reasons why Hezbollah, should it attack Israel, will not have a lot of support from the Lebanese. Egypt's economy is crashing. Of course, Iran is thriving. Iran is the glimmering light of economic expansion and prosperity thanks to the funding by Joe Biden, tens of billions of dollars for nothing. Michael Duran, who I had on here the other weekend, he wrote about the plan by Obama, then Biden, Blinken, Sullivan, and the other reprobates. He called it the realignment of the Middle East. Now, these kinds of things can only be baked up in kitchens in Ivy Towers or Ivy League schools, or what I call poison Ivy League schools. You basically have different Arab countries with different leaders. Some of them have military dictatorships. Some of them have monarchies. Some of them are relatively recent in the timeline in the Middle East, like the dictator who's in Egypt and so forth. Some of them were created in the 1920s, like Saudi Arabia and Jordan, where monarchs were put in place by the British and others. Some of them go back much further. So when we treat the Arabs, the Muslims, these countries, as if they're all one and the same thing, they're not, except for this. They will do anything to survive. The monarchies seek to survive. It's one inbred to the next. The military dictatorships seek to survive. Or they'll be knocked off by another military dictatorship, or maybe the Muslim Brotherhood, or something like that. Iran is not an Arab country. It's Persian. It's trying to build a caliphate to control those Arab countries and other Muslim countries who do not share their Muslim sect. It's very complex. It's very complicated. But that doesn't make the difference between good and evil complicated. That's actually very simple. There's not a single democracy among the Arab states. Not one. Not one. That they have in common. Number two, many of them, but not all of them, will do anything to survive. Even if it means paying billions of dollars to Hamas or some other terrorist entities to try and buy peace, they'll do what they have to do. Even if it means piling on Israel, even though some of them are praying that Israel defeats Hamas once and for all, so Hamas cannot build the caliphate that it wishes to build. And many of them quietly and secretly want Israel to eventually take on or take out Iran, which they all fear. Because again, look at what's going on in Yemen. In fact, look at what's going on in Iraq, the Democracy Project. Another project, really, that came out of textbooks, scholars wrote about, will spread democracy in a part of the world that's never really experienced it except one, Israel. Many of the so-called moderate Arab states, therefore, they say one thing in public and do another thing in private. But they're out for their own interests. The problem with the Biden administration is it treats these countries as a conglomerate in the aggregate. And so as best as I can tell, what the Biden foreign policy is the foreign policy of an arsonist. Now, why do I say that? Because they blew up the Middle East. They went from Obama's effort to re-engineer the entire region to Donald Trump, who said, that's crap. Let's get down to basics. Let's deal with practicality. There are countries that want peace. There's countries that don't. It's clear the Palestinians don't. Let's work around them, and let's deal with those countries that do, and then they can work out Israel, with our help, and these Arab countries' individual peace arrangements, which became known as the Abraham Accords. So Trump threw out the entire playbook. The entire playbook's been totally wrong. And he certainly threw out Obama's playbook, because that was insane. But now Biden's in office. He takes Obama's playbook, and he's in chapter, probably the epilogue, near the end. He's got the same failed, moronic reprobates around him that Obama did. And it's my view that Obama is calling the shots in many, many respects, given Biden's obvious mental condition. So what is it that Biden wants to achieve in the Middle East? They've kind of said it. They want an assimilation. They want an assimilation between the so-called moderate Arab states and Israel. Assimilate what? Assimilate their economies. Assimilate their militaries. Assimilate their national security interests. As Duran says, to rebalance the Middle East. And in order to do that, Israel has to be weakened and other countries have to be strengthened. It gets worse. And in the Biden-Obama, and before that, the Obama-Biden ideology, Iran has to be built up. Iran has to be the counterbalance in order to achieve all these fantastic efforts at assimilation that are going to spring from it. Of course it's nuts, but this is what they're doing. This is what they believe. So Iran has been rearmed by the United States, by Joe Biden. The Iranian people have been put down. They rose up to overthrow that government. They've been put down because of the money they've received and the support they've received from Biden and his regime. They showed no support, no interest in the real freedom fighters, the people, the teenage girls that were rising up to try and overthrow that regime. So now they have an iron grasp over their own people. And with Iran, Biden's policy is disastrous. He's been at the point of the spear on appeasement. We have nuclear appeasement with Iran. Iran's going to get a nuclear weapon, and we're not going to stop them. It's going to be up to little Israel once again. And they're going to be under pressure by the United States not to do it. We have economic appeasement, where all kinds of trade routes have been opened to Iran, where they're able to fund China, where China is able to buy enormous amounts of oil from Iran. 90% of the oil Iran sells goes to China. All trade restrictions essentially have been lifted. We have restrictions on trade with Iran. All have been waived. There's no more discussion about how to stop Iran from getting nukes. While they're attacking American soldiers, we're sending them billions and billions of dollars. And I don't want to hear from the green eye shade phony accounts about it goes here, that doesn't. We're funding Iran. While Iran is attacking American soldiers, while Iran is funding Hamas, while Iran is funding the Houthis, while Iran is funding Hezbollah, while Iran is funding terrorist cells in the United States that have threatened to kill our former Secretary of State and our former National Security Advisor. It is Biden, directly and indirectly, who's enriching that country. Balance, you see. At the same time, they're trying to push Israel not to defeat Hamas in 100 different ways. And they candy coat it, they camouflage it as a humanitarian pause. There can be no humanitarian pause when you're trying to wipe out a terrorist regime that kills its own people and kills Israelis with nothing more than to kill Americans. Humanitarian pause? The propaganda is appalling. So Israel is told, you can defend yourself to a point. The Biden administration actually would love if Israel would just stop right now. They're going to continue to build up Iran. This idiotic, insane policy of assimilation through different cultures when even the Arab countries don't get along. Now Biden is desperately trying to save what he's created. He lit a fire in the Middle East, and so what is he doing? Well, he sends 2 aircraft carriers that are sitting there. What are they doing? They're not doing anything. Maybe they'll hit a few warehouses, but he wants to show we mean it. He sends a nuclear sub. Are they going to fire nuclear missiles somewhere? What's the nuclear sub? He wants to show he's strong while behind the scenes, he's undermining the state of Israel and building up Iran. You want to show you're strong? When Iran attacks our bases and does severe damage to our soldiers, you hit strategic locations in Iran. When Iran went after our Navy, went after freighters, Ronald Reagan knocked out half of their Navy. We didn't hear from them since, until, of course, Obama, and before that, frankly, Bush. So Biden's looking for excuses. He's looking for people to blame. Nobody better than Netanyahu, who is hated by the American left and the New York Times and our media, who's hated by the radicals that run these parties, these minority parties in Israel, as they try and undermine his government before the war, and they're trying to undermine it during the war. And these billionaires like Soros and other billionaires, dark money coming in to try and undermine the state of Israel, to try and remove Netanyahu and the government in the middle of a war. He does not want Israel to win any more than he does not want Ukraine to win. You know, I'm not one of these isolationists, but I understand the exasperation with never-ending wars. And Biden wants a never-ending war in Ukraine. Late with equipment, late with the wrong equipment. He's warned them that they cannot use the equipment to actually defeat Russia. These people in Ukraine are being chewed up and spit out, and Israel's not going to put up with it. They are not going to be chewed up and spit out. So he has a failed foreign policy that can be best described as a foreign policy of arson, where he sets fires all over the place, or others set fires, and he won't put them out in the proper way. And so he claims to be concerned about civilians. Unless they're Iranians, he doesn't give a damn. Unless they're in any other part of the Middle East but the Gaza Strip, he doesn't give a damn. He doesn't lecture those countries, those regimes, about civilians and killing your own civilians. He doesn't give a damn about our own civilians on the southern border who are dying tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands during the course of his administration because he won't secure the border. And so he's now looking for blame. But it's more than that. You ever see the movie The Bridge Over the River Kwai? It's a great movie. I believe it was 1957, give or take. And there's a Lieutenant Colonel Nicholson, played by Alec Guinness. And trust me, Joe Biden's no Alec Guinness. And the bottom line at the end of the movie, you have a POW camp in Indochina. The brutal Japanese empire, Imperial Japan, are brutalizing American Yanks. And they have these POW camps where they keep them. And so they decide that they're going to use them for slave labor. And they need this bridge over the River Kwai so they can move Japanese troops from one location to another. And Lieutenant Colonel Nicholson, he's basically the commanding officer of the platoon that was captured, or members of the platoon who are in this POW camp. And they build this bridge, and it's beautiful. They develop the architecture. They decide how it's going to be built. They complete it. They complete it in record time. But the order goes out to blow it up. Blow it up when a train full of Japanese soldiers are crossing the bridge. And there is the plunger for the TNT on the opposite end of the bridge from where the Japanese train is coming. And so the order goes out, blow it up. Blow it up. And the train's coming. And you won't blow it up. Why? He was too proud of the bridge. He was too proud of what they have created. It didn't matter. He wouldn't blow it up. Then at the end, he's shot, and as he's dying, he falls over, hits the plunger, the bridge blows up with a Japanese train. Not a perfect parallel, but good enough. That's Joe Biden's foreign policy. He needs to blow it up, but he won't blow it up. And the enemy keeps crossing his bridge and crossing his bridge. And he keeps making sure that they have enough money to get across that bridge. Joe Biden is a stubborn, intransigent individual who is always an arsonist when it comes to foreign policy, and he is surrounded by Obama sycophants and acolytes who are dumber than he is.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.